October 25, 1944. 6:58 a.m. Philippine Sea off Samar Island. A lookout aboard USS Johnston spots masts on the horizon. Then superstructures. Then the entire Japanese center force. 4 battleships, 8 cruisers, 11 destroyers. The largest warship concentration in the Pacific War, steaming directly towards 6 defenseless American escort carriers packed with troops for the Leyte invasion. Commander Ernest E. Evans, the first Native American to command a U.S. Navy destroyer, looks at the approaching fleet through his binoculars. His ship, USS Johnston, a 2,500-ton Fletcher-class destroyer, faces vessels displacing 10 to 30 times his tonnage. The super-battleship Yamato alone weighs 72,000 tons and carries 9 18.1-inch guns that can kill Johnston from 25 miles away. Standard doctrine says, make smoke, retreat, call for help. Evans turns to his crew and gives an order nobody expects. Prepare to attack major portion of Japanese fleet. Alone. Without orders. Without support. Against 23 enemy warships. For the next 3 hours, Johnston will fight the most heroic naval action in American history. She'll cripple a heavy cruiser, drive battleships into evasive maneuvers, and force the entire Japanese fleet to withdraw, saving 10,000 American troops waiting on Leyte's beaches. Evans will die at his post, receive the Medal of Honor, and prove that courage matters more than tonnage. Before we reveal how one destroyer defeated an entire fleet, smash that subscribe button. Drop a like and comment which WW2 naval battle amazes you most. This channel tells the stories they don't teach in history class. Now let me show you how 327 men saved an invasion. October 27, 1943. Seattle Navy Yard. Commander Ernest Edwin Evans stands on the deck of his brand-new destroyer, USS Johnston, DD 557, addressing his crew for the first time. Evans is 36 years old, part Cherokee and Creek Indian from Oklahoma, and the first Native American in U.S. Navy history to command a destroyer. He's just received the ship from the builders, and his commissioning speech will become legendary among the men who survive the next 13 months. This is going to be a fighting ship. I intend to go in harm's way, and anyone who doesn't want to go along had better get off right now. Nobody moves. The crew of 327 men, officers, chiefs, sailors, stare at their captain and understand they've just signed up for something different from routine convoy duty. Evans isn't joking. He's establishing doctrine that will define every decision Johnston makes until her final moments. The Fletcher-class destroyer is magnificent but fragile. She's 376 feet long, displaces 2,500 tons, and can make 38 knots when her boilers are pushed to maximum. Armament consists of 5 single 5-inch/38 caliber guns, 10 40mm Bofors anti-aircraft guns, 7 20mm cannons, and 10 21-inch torpedo tubes loaded with Mark 15 torpedoes. Against aircraft and submarines, she's formidable. Against battleships, she's kindling. Evans drills his crew relentlessly. Gunnery practice until the 5-inch guns can fire 22 rounds per minute, above the designed rate of 15. Damage control drills where teams race to seal compartments and fight fires. Torpedo runs practiced until the crew can launch a full spread in under 2 minutes. The captain's philosophy is simple. If Johnston enters combat, she'll be outgunned, so she needs to be faster, more accurate, and more aggressive than anything she faces. BY June 1944. Johnston has escorted convoys across the Pacific, participated in the Marshall Islands campaign, and earned a reputation as a tight ship with an aggressive captain. The crew respects Evans because he's competent, demanding, and genuinely concerned about their survival. He walks the ship constantly, learning names, asking about families, checking maintenance personally. This isn't sentimentality, it's building unit cohesion that will matter when things get desperate. October 24, 1944. Johnston joins Task Unit April 3, 77, designated Taffy 3 in Navy Communications. The unit consists of 6 escort carriers, small, slow aircraft carriers built on merchant hulls, 3 destroyers, Johnston, Hull, and Heermann, and 4 smaller destroyer escorts. Their mission is providing air support for the Leyte invasion, not fighting surface engagements. Escort carriers are essentially aircraft ferries with thin armor and maximum speeds of 18 knots. They're designed to hide behind screening forces, not fight battleships. The tactical situation on October 24th seems manageable. American carriers have devastated Japanese naval power at Philippine Sea in June. Intelligence suggests the remaining Japanese surface fleet won't risk major operations. Admiral William Halsey's powerful Third Fleet with its fast battleships and fleet carriers is hunting north of Leyte, covering the American invasion forces. October 24, 1944. Evening. Everything goes wrong simultaneously. Admiral Halsey's Third Fleet, believing Japanese carriers pose the primary threat, races north chasing a decoy force. This leaves San Bernardino Strait, the passage between Philippine Islands, completely unguarded. Through the strait steams Admiral Takeo Kurida's center force. The super-battleships Yamato and Musashi, battleships Nagato, Kongo, and Haruna, 6 heavy cruisers, 2 light cruisers, and 11 destroyers. 23 warships with one mission. Destroy the American landing forces at Leyte Gulf. Kurida's fleet has already been savaged. American submarines sank 2 heavy cruisers on October 23. Carrier aircraft hit them throughout October 24, sinking the super-battleship Musashi and damaging multiple vessels. But Kurita pushes through anyway, gambling that reaching the invasion beaches will justify any losses. His fleet enters San Bernardino Strait at 9 p.m. on October 24, passes through in darkness, and emerges into the Philippine Sea at 3 a.m. on October 25th. Nobody is waiting for them. The strait is supposed to be guarded by Halsey's battleships. Instead, there's open ocean. Kurita's navigation officers confirm their position, 40 miles north of Leyte Gulf, with nothing between them and the defenseless American transports except whatever screening forces the Americans have deployed. At dawn, they'll sweep south and annihilate the invasion fleet. 6:45 a.m. October 25th. Taffy 3's escort carriers are launching routine air patrols when lookouts on USS Fanshawe Bay spot anti-aircraft fire on the northern horizon. This makes no sense, there shouldn't be any ships up there. Then the reports start flooding in. Enemy surface force of 4 battleships, 8 cruisers, and destroyers sighted 20 miles northwest closing at high speed. Admiral Clifton Sprague, commanding Taffy 3 from the carrier Fanshawe Bay, reads the report and feels his stomach drop. His force? 6 escort carriers, 3 destroyers, for destroyer escorts, is the only thing between Kurita's massive fleet and the Leyte landing beaches packed with 10,000 troops who have no way to evacuate. The escort carriers can't fight. They're thin-skinned, slow, and armed with 5-inch guns designed for self-defense against aircraft, not naval gunnery duels. If Kurita's battleships reach gun range, Taffy 3 dies. Sprague has seconds to make decisions that will save or doom thousands. He orders the carriers to run southeast at maximum speed, all 18 knots, while launching every available aircraft armed with whatever weapons are loaded. He orders the screening destroyers and destroyer escorts to make smoke and prepare for torpedo attacks. This is desperation doctrine. The smoke might hide the carriers temporarily, but Kurita's fleet can close at 30 knots. The torpedo attacks might cause confusion, but destroyers attacking battleships is suicide. 6:58 a.m. Johnston's radar confirms the contact. Enemy surface force bearing 330 degrees, range 30,000 yards, closing fast. Evans doesn't wait for orders. He's watched Sprague's carriers start their death run, and he knows what happens next. The carriers will be caught within the hour unless something stops Kurita's advance. Johnston can't stop them, but she might delay them long enough for the carriers to escape. 7 a.m. Commander Evans makes the call that defines his legacy. All engines ahead flank. Commence firing on cruiser bearing 330. Johnston surges forward at 38 knots, black smoke pouring from her stacks as the engineering crew pushes the boilers beyond maximum rated pressure. The crew doesn't question the order. They've trained for this moment for 13 months, though nobody believed it would actually happen. Johnston is charging alone. The other destroyers, Hull and Heermann, are still forming up for coordinated attacks. The destroyer escorts are smaller and slower. But Evans isn't waiting for coordination because coordination takes time. and time means Kurita's battleships get closer to the carriers with every second. This is tactical insanity executed with perfect discipline. The target is the heavy cruiser Kumano, leading Kurita's formation. Kumano displaces 13,000 tons, mounts 10 8-inch guns, and has armor belts thick enough to shrug off 5-inch shells. Johnston's shells can't penetrate that armor at any range. But the Japanese don't know Evans doesn't care about sinking Kumano. He cares about forcing her to maneuver, to break formation, to worry about a destroyer charging through a curtain of battleship fire at 18,000 yards. Johnston opens fire with all 5 5-inch guns. The shells arc across the gray dawn sky and splash near Kumano. The Japanese cruiser returns fire immediately, 8 8-inch guns flashing orange. The shells scream overhead, massive projectiles weighing 260 pounds each, capable of punching through Johnston's thin hull like paper. Evans orders course changes, zigzagging at full speed while maintaining the charge. His gunnery officer has trained for exactly this scenario, firing while maneuvering at maximum speed against targets shooting back 7:10 a.m. Johnston closes to 10,000 yards. Kumano's shells are landing closer now. One hits the water 50 feet from Johnston's bow, throwing up a geyser that drenches the forward gun crew. Japanese battleship secondary batteries join the barrage. 14-inch shells from Kongo and Haruna bracket Johnston, each shell carrying enough explosive to break her in half. The American destroyer is surrounded by shell splashes, creating a forest of water columns through which she weaves like a slalom skier. The crew performs their tasks with mechanical precision despite knowing they're probably dead. Gun crews load and fire in rhythm: load, ram, fire, eject, repeat. Damage control teams stand ready with pumps and patches. The torpedo crews prepare their weapons, checking pressures and running final safety checks. Nobody panics because panic requires thinking about consequences, and there's no time for thinking. There's only the next task, the next correction, the next shell to fire. 7:15 a.m. Range 9,000 yards. Close enough. Evans orders, fire torpedoes. 10 Mark 15 torpedoes drop from their tubes and accelerate to 46 knots. Their wakes drawing white lines across the dark water toward the Japanese formation. Johnston swings hard left, presenting her stern to the enemy while making smoke to cover her escape. The torpedoes will take approximately 6 minutes to reach their targets. 7:21 a.m. The torpedoes reach their target zone. Kumano detects them and swerves hard to port, her massive bulk turning with agonizing slowness. One torpedo catches her bow, the warhead detonating with a thunderous explosion that tears away 60 feet of her forward structure. The heavy cruiser slews to a stop, her bow flooding, fires erupting from ruptured fuel lines. She's out of the fight, 10,000 tons of Japanese combat power neutralized by a destroyer that cost $6 million to build. But Johnston has paid for that hit. While making her torpedo run, 3 14-inch shells from battleship Kongo found her. The first shell smashes through the deck near the after engine room, penetrating without exploding. A dud that nonetheless tears a massive hole in the hull. The second shell detonates in the aft crew berthing area, killing a dozen men instantly and starting fires. The third shell hits the bridge directly, a catastrophic impact that kills or wounds nearly everyone on Johnston's command center. Commander Evans is hurled across the bridge by the blast. Shrapnel tears through his left hand, nearly severing 2 fingers. His chest and abdomen are peppered with metal fragments. Blood pours from multiple wounds. The executive officer is dead. The gunnery officer is dead. Half the bridge crew is dead or dying. The ship's internal communications, the sound-powered phones that allow the bridge to communicate with the guns, engineering, and damage control, are completely destroyed. Johnston is deaf and her captain is bleeding out. Most commanders would order abandon ship. Evans orders shift steering control to aft. The auxiliary steering station in the rear of the ship can control the rudder manually through a system of cables and pulleys. It's slow, imprecise, and requires a sailor to physically turn a large wheel based on shouted instructions from wherever the captain happens to be standing. But it works. Evans staggers out of the wrecked bridge onto the open deck. Blood soaks his uniform. His left hand is useless, wrapped in a hasty bandage that's already saturated. He starts shouting orders to runners who sprint through the ship relaying commands. After engine room, maintain flank speed. Gun mounts, local control, pick your own targets. Damage control, seal the flooding, fight the fires. The Japanese formation has become chaos. Kumano is dead in the water. Kongo and Haruna have both turned away from the torpedo tracks, opening range from Taffy 3's carriers to avoid more torpedo attacks. The other Japanese cruisers and destroyers are scattered, trying to reorganize while avoiding torpedoes and watching for more suicide runs. Johnston's solo charge has bought the carriers 15 precious minutes. Hull and Heermann are now making their own torpedo runs, adding to the confusion. 7:30 a.m. Johnston has taken 3 14-inch hits, multiple 8-inch hits from cruiser fire, and her speed has dropped to 17 knots. One of her 2 engines is destroyed, the other damaged. She's trailing oil, listing 5 degrees to port, and fires are burning in 3 compartments. By any rational assessment, she's finished as an effective combat unit. Evans disagrees. All guns, commence firing. Any target that presents itself. Johnston still has 4 of her 5 main guns operational. She has ammunition. She has a crew that hasn't quit. And the Japanese fleet is still trying to reach Taffy 3's carriers. 8 a.m. The battle has become a confused melee across 50 square miles of ocean. Taffy 3's carriers are running southeast, launching every aircraft they have armed with bombs, torpedoes, depth charges, or nothing at all. Pilots making dry runs to distract Japanese gunners. The destroyers Hull and Heermann have made their torpedo attacks and are now trading fire with battleships at suicidal ranges. The destroyer escorts Samuel B. Roberts, Dennis, Raymond, and John C. Butler are charging into the formation, their smaller guns barking defiance. Johnston, battered and bleeding oil, has become the most dangerous vessel in the American force because Commander Evans has stopped playing defense. He's attacking, constantly. Whenever Japanese cruisers or destroyers try to close on the carriers, Johnston appears through the smoke and gun haze, firing every weapon that still functions. Her 5-inch guns are scoring hits on light cruisers. Her 40mm anti-aircraft guns are raking Japanese destroyer superstructures. She's drawing fire from vessels 10 times her size, and she's absorbing that fire to keep them focused on her instead of the carriers. The tactical situation is unprecedented in naval warfare. A formation of screening ships, vessels designed to protect capital ships from submarines and aircraft, is fighting a surface engagement against battleships. This isn't supposed to be possible. Destroyers don't fight battleships in daylight gun duels. But nobody has told Evans that, or perhaps he's decided the rulebook doesn't apply when 10,000 American soldiers are about to die on Leyte's beaches. 8:20 a.m. Johnston encounters Japanese destroyer Squadron 10, 7 Yugimo-class destroyers attempting to flank Taffy 3's carriers for torpedo attacks. Evans positions Johnston between the destroyers and the carriers, engaging all 7 simultaneously. The Japanese destroyers are larger, faster, and undamaged. They have Johnston outnumbered 7-1. Evans doesn't care about the odds, he cares about buying time. The gunnery duel is savage. Johnston's 4 remaining 5-inch guns fire as fast as their crews can load them. Japanese destroyers return fire with their 127mm guns, smaller than battleship weapons but perfectly capable of killing a destroyer. Shells tear through Johnston's superstructure. Her forward smoke generator is destroyed. Mount 52, the second 5-inch gun from the bow, takes a direct hit that kills the entire gun crew. More fires erupt. The list increases to 10 degrees. But Johnston's fire is accurate. Her gunnery officer is dead. But the gun crews are firing in local control, each mount choosing its own target and firing without coordination. It's chaos, but it's effective chaos. One Japanese destroyer, Yamagumo, takes multiple hits and breaks off, her bridge wrecked and fires spreading. The others scatter, their torpedo attack disrupted. The carriers remain out of torpedo range. 8:40 a.m. Johnston has been fighting for nearly 2 hours. She's taken over 40 hits from various caliber weapons. Her speed has dropped to 10 knots, the surviving engine is failing. Only 2 5-inch guns remain operational. She's down by the stern, listing 15 degrees, and the engineering crew reports flooding in 3 compartments that they cannot control. Commander Evans, still standing on the open deck because the bridge no longer exists, knows the ship is dying. A Japanese heavy cruiser, Haguro, closes to finish her. Haguro's 8-inch guns fire at point-blank range, 6,000 yards. The massive shells punch through Johnston's thin hull without resistance. 9:10 a.m. Johnston is dying, but she's still fighting. One 5-inch gun remains operational, Mount 51, the forward gun. The crew has fired over 400 rounds since the battle started. The barrel is so hot it's glowing red. The loading mechanism is jamming every 3rd round. They keep firing anyway, hurling shells at Japanese cruisers that are methodically destroying their ship. Commander Evans stands on what's left of the main deck, one hand clutching a stanchion to keep from sliding down the increasing list, the other hand, his wounded left hand, hanging useless at his side. Blood loss is making him dizzy. He's issuing orders through messengers because there's no other way to communicate. A sailor runs up. "Sir, engine room reports flooding is uncontrollable. We're losing steam pressure." Evans nods. He already knows this is the end. The order comes at 9:20 a.m. Abandon ship. It's not surrender, it's acknowledging reality. Johnston is settling by the stern. Her list has reached 25 degrees, and Japanese cruisers are still firing. Staying aboard means dying for no purpose. The crew begins throwing life rafts overboard and jumping into the oil-slicked water. The wounded are lowered on ropes. Men help each other despite being injured themselves. This is the discipline Evans demanded 13 months ago, manifesting in the final moments. Evans refuses to leave. Multiple sailors report seeing the captain standing on the slanting deck as they jump. Some call to him to abandon ship. He waves them away. Lieutenant Robert Hagen, the senior surviving officer, is the last man Evans speaks to. Abandon ship. Get the men into the water. Hagen tries to convince Evans to come. The captain shakes his head. "I'm staying with the ship." 9:45 a.m. USS Johnston rolls to port, her starboard side lifting clear of the water, exposing the red anti-fouling paint on her hull. Men in the water watch their ship die. She pauses for a moment, bow high, stern submerged, then slides beneath the Philippine Sea. Commander Ernest E. Evans goes down with her. His body is never recovered. In the water, 141 survivors cling to rafts and debris. They're coated in fuel oil, burned, wounded, exhausted. Japanese ships pass close by, close enough that survivors can see Japanese sailors on deck watching them. Some survivors report Japanese sailors saluting as they pass. Whether this is respect for Johnston's fight or standard naval courtesy toward defeated enemies, nobody knows. But the Japanese don't stop to take prisoners. They're retreating. Because Taffy 3-1. Against impossible odds, the escort carriers survived. Admiral Kurita, confused by the ferocious resistance and convinced he's fighting a far larger force than 6 escort carriers, orders his fleet to withdraw at 9:25 a.m. The largest battleship fleet Japan can muster turns away from 6 thin-skinned escort carriers defended by destroyers that shouldn't have survived 5 minutes. The invasion force at Leyte Gulf, 10,000 troops packed into transports and landing craft, never knows how close they came to annihilation. The butcher's bill is savage. USS Johnston, sunk. USS Hull, sunk. USS Samuel B. Roberts, sunk. Escort carrier Gamber Bay, sunk. Over 1,500 American sailors dead or missing. The survivors float in the Philippine Sea for 2 days. The Navy knows approximately where Taffy 3 fought, but the area is vast and the survivors are scattered across miles of ocean. Sharks circle. Men die from wounds, exposure, and drinking salt water. Lieutenant Robert Hagen, Johnston's senior surviving officer, keeps men together by sheer force of will. They sing songs. They tell stories. They refuse to give up because giving up would dishonor what their ship accomplished. October 27, 1944. A destroyer escort finally locates the survivors. Of Johnston's 327-man crew, only 141 are rescued. Commander Evans is listed as missing in action, presumed killed. The Navy will later change this to killed in action based on survivor testimony that he stayed aboard when Johnston sank. His body is never found. He's 37 years old. The Medal of Honor recommendation comes immediately. Admiral Nimitz personally reviews the action reports and survivor statements. The recommendation describes Evans's solo attack as one of the most heroic acts in U.S. naval history. The medal is awarded posthumously in 1945, making Ernest E. Evans the first Native American in the U.S. Navy to receive the nation's highest military honor. But the full story takes decades to emerge. The battle off Samar is overshadowed by larger Leyte Gulf actions, the carrier battle, the battleship engagement in Surigao Strait, the kamikaze attacks. The sacrifice of Taffy III's small boys becomes a footnote in official histories that focus on admirals and strategy rather than destroyer captains who charged battleships. The Japanese perspective adds layers of understanding. Admiral Kurita's after-action reports reveal he believed he was fighting fleet carriers protected by heavy cruisers and fleet destroyers. The ferocity of the torpedo attacks, the accuracy of the gunfire, and the aggressive tactics convinced him he'd stumbled into a major American force. When he withdrew, he thought he was avoiding a trap, not retreating from 6 escort carriers and 7 screening ships. Japanese officers captured after the war express astonishment when they learn the truth. Captain Tamichi Hara, one of Japan's most experienced destroyer commanders, reviews the battle details and states flatly, "American destroyer commanders must be insane. No rational officer orders a destroyer to attack battleships." But that insanity, what Americans call courage, saved the Leyte invasion and potentially changed the war's outcome. The tactical analysis reveals why Johnston's charge worked. By attacking immediately and aggressively, Evans forced Kurita to respond to threats rather than execute his plan. Every minute Japanese ships spent maneuvering to avoid torpedoes was a minute they weren't closing on the carriers. Every ship that turned away from torpedo tracks opened range instead of closing it. The confusion created by smoke, aircraft attacks, and continuous surface threats made accurate gunnery nearly impossible despite the Japanese having overwhelming firepower advantage. The doctrine Evans employed, attack immediately with maximum aggression, becomes standard teaching at the Naval War College. Modern destroyer captains study the battle off Samar as a case study in how determination and initiative can overcome material disadvantage. The lesson isn't that destroyers can sink battleships. The lesson is that aggressive action by forces that refuse to be intimidated can achieve objectives beyond their apparent capability. The vindication comes slowly. For decades, the battle off Samar remains obscure outside naval circles. Then in 2019, billionaire explorer Victor Vescovo discovers Johnston's wreck lying 21,180 feet below the surface, the deepest shipwreck ever found at that time. The discovery reignites interest in the battle and Evans's sacrifice. High-resolution sonar images show Johnston's broken hull, her guns still trained outward as if ready to fire one more time. The wreck reveals forensic evidence of the battle's ferocity. The bridge is completely destroyed, matching survivor accounts. The after-engine room shows catastrophic damage from the 14-inch shell hit. The hull is riddled with holes from dozens of impacts. But what strikes researchers most is Johnston's position, bow pointing toward where the Japanese fleet was located in 1944. Even in death, she's still advancing toward the enemy. Modern Navy destroyer crews study Evans's actions as an example of initiative and aggressive leadership. The phrase "going in harm's way" from Evans's commissioning speech becomes shorthand for the destroyer community's ethos. New destroyer captains are required to read action reports from the battle off Samar. The lesson is clear. When facing overwhelming odds, aggression creates opportunity that defensive thinking cannot achieve. The human cost is never forgotten. 186 men died aboard Johnston. Each had families who received telegrams explaining their son, husband, or father died in heroic action. Many families never learned the full story, just that their loved one served on a destroyer that sank during the Battle of Leyte Gulf. The details of what Johnston accomplished, how she bought time for the carriers, how she attacked an entire fleet alone, remained classified or obscure for years. Commander Ernest E. Evans receives posthumous recognition that accumulates over decades. The Medal of Honor in 1945. A destroyer escort, USS Evans, DE, 1023, named for him in 1955. Induction into the Oklahoma Hall of Fame in 1999. A building at the Naval Academy named Evans Hall. But perhaps the most meaningful tribute comes from Japanese officers who faced Johnston that October morning. In post-war interviews, they express respect bordering on disbelief for the destroyer that fought like a battleship. The battle off Samar proves what military theorists doubt, that courage, properly applied, can overcome material disadvantage. Johnston didn't sink Yamato or Musashi. She didn't destroy Kurita's fleet. What she did was refuse to accept the outcome that statistics predicted. A 2,500-ton destroyer faced vessels 30 times her size and decided that dying while attacking was preferable to surviving by retreating. That decision saved 10,000 American lives waiting on ladies' beaches. It changed the trajectory of the Pacific War, and it established Ernest E. Evans as proof that leadership, courage, and aggressive action matter more than tonnage, armor, or guns. His crew followed him into what should have been certain death, because he'd spent 13 months earning their trust and training them for exactly that moment. Johnston's motto, chosen by Evans at commissioning, was "We will stand by you." On October 25, 1944, she stood by Taffy 3's carriers when every rational calculation said she should run. She stood by until she couldn't stand anymore. That's not insanity. That's heroism in its purest form, knowing the cost and paying it anyway because the alternative is unconscionable.